Go.
All right, what I hope is the last thing I need to do is look at investment demand, which is a nice, uncomplicated, simple graph for a change. Now, just like you've looked at with regular demand curves before, you need a price and you need a quantity. The price of investment, the easiest way to look at it is to say that it is the interest rate, because that's the money that you have to pay to borrow the money to buy the investment products. We're not talking about buying stocks and bonds. We're talking about investments the way we look at it in terms of business spending as a component of GDP, aggregate expenditures, and aggregate demand. Remember, all the same components, nice and consistent. So, we're going to put the interest rate up here, which is usually abbreviated as a lowercase I. And the other thing you might see is a lowercase r for rate of return. But more often you're going to see the interest rate, so that's what I use most of the time. Now, price, quantity. Does it have to be real complicated? No, it's the quantity of investment. Nice, simple. Now, you could probably figure, like all the other demand curves that we've looked at so far, it's going to slope down. Why is that? Because if the price of investment is the interest rate, when the interest rate is very high, the amount of money that people want to borrow to invest is going to be relatively low. When the interest rate is low, the amount of money that people want to borrow for investment purposes is very high. When the price is high, the quantity is low. When the price is low, the quantity demanded is higher. Okay? Just like every other demand curve that we've looked at all year.
Hey, wait a minute. This is like every other demand curve we've looked at all year.
Thank you for playing. All right. Now, in terms of the determinants of investment demand, remember, the determinants mean what determines where it's going to be on the graph or the things that can cause it to shift. I've seen different lists of factors in different books, so I'm just going to give you a couple that you can keep in mind here. And hopefully, if you see something different, you can use your mental processes and stuff to kind of figure it out. All right, so the first one that we can look at is a change in profitability.
What's the acorn for? Thank you.
It's a delta. All right, a change in profitability. If, for example, we see that an investment is appreciating, then there's more of an incentive for a business to spend more money. That would cause the curve to shift out. If we see a drop in profitability, then that's a disincentive or a reason not to invest as much. We would expect to see that shift to the left. So changes in profitability would be one idea here. All right. For the second one, a change in business conditions, which is another one that's like, what does that mean? Not much. Business conditions. Which can also mean taxes and subsidies and regulations and all the other stuff that we already talked about that fall under the big umbrella of stuff that's happening with business that, might have an impact on what they're spending. So we can throw all of that stuff into it. Okay. Now, in terms of a third factor, there are several different ways that we could go with this. One of the ones that tends to get ignored by a lot of textbooks would be a change in confidence. Now, just like we talked about with consumer confidence being how good do the consumers feel about the economy? Do they think that prices are going to be stable? Do they think that interest rates are going to pretty much stay the way they are? Business confidence or producer confidence will have an impact on how much money they are willing to spend. Now, that can also tie into one of the other things that we talked about today, which is expectations. What do you think is going to happen? For example, if we look at this today and say, okay, the Fed's Open Market Committee just met and said they're going to keep interest rates stable. And we had a statement from Ben Bernanke that was published in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that kind of surprised me, where he basically said that they're not changing rates anytime soon. So, what if they had said, for example, that in the next 6 months interest rates will be rising? There's an incentive to invest money today while the rates are low to kind of lock that in. If people believe that inflation will be increasing in the future, an increase in inflation will drive up interest rates. Again, that's an incentive to do that today. Ties into confidence, ties into what people think is going to happen, ties into a speculative kind of environment. So, again, there are other ways that we could do this. Other books have different lists, and I don't want to go through every single possibility with you because, as I've said before, don't memorize the directions of the shifts. What you need to keep in mind is what kind of factors will cause an increase, what kind of factors will cause a decrease. What you've got to remember, though, is that this curve is drawn to reflect all the possible interest rates with their associated quantities of investment. So changing the interest rate does not shift the curve. Changing price is a movement on the curve. Changing these other factors will cause a shift.